Hello and welcome to Writer Chat with me, Gerald Hornsby. And tonight I'm very pleased, at last after some technical glitches, to welcome Elizabeth Ducie to the show, who's a very prolific writer. And we're going to find out all about what she writes, how she writes, when she writes, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, hi Elizabeth.
Hi, nice to be able to talk to you finally.
Yeah. I hope people haven't just tuned in at 7 and then just gone off down the pub or something. So I think I would. Yes, so you haven't always been a writer, have you?
I've done an awful lot of writing since I was a child. But I haven't always been a creative writer. I did my first creative writing and won my first competition when I was 14,
Wow.
and then I became a scientist and did nothing but technical writing for the next 40 years, and then decided I wanted to have another go at creative writing.
Fantastic. So you're a scientist. Obviously, it was technical writing, reports, that sort of thing.
Yes, it started off as audit reports. I used to visit factories all around the world and check that they were making their drugs safely. I was in the pharmaceutical industry, so checking that the drugs were made safely. And then it went from there to training modules and then textbooks and articles. And at one point I was an editor for a technical journal, so I was both writing and editing for a while.
Wow. But then you sort of thought, I've had enough of this, I want to do a bit of creative stuff.
Well, both those work was international. Like anybody that spent a lot of time on planes and in airports and hotels and that, I had a whole load of anecdotes and experiences and things which I wanted to try and get down on paper. So I was still working in the pharma world, but I tried to learn how to write memoirs, how to do life writing, and I found that my memoirs are okay, but I'm actually better at writing fiction, and I found that I could use my experiences, my travel experiences in my fiction. So a lot of my stories are set in Russia and places like that, which is where I've done a lot of my work. So for about 6 years I was working in the technical area and doing the creative writing as well. And then one day I was on a teleconference with a crowd of American pharma guys, and I suddenly I can remember this thought flashing across my head. I don't care whether these drugs are being made safely or not. I think it's time I got out. So I took that as a signal that it was time I did something else. So I was running my own technical consultancy with my husband at that time. So I gave up the technical job, gave up the day job, and became a full-time writer.
Fantastic. And what year was that in?
That was 2012.
Wow.
So I'm in my just coming up for the end of the 3rd year. I didn't realise it was that long. It's gone really fast.
You must be enjoying it.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Oh, fantastic! It's a great way to spend a life, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yes. Telling lies for a living and occasionally being paid for it is really nice.
But you're not just written creative stuff. You've written, I mean, Sunshine and Sausages, I see.
Yes.
Planning of garden parties and things like that. So that's your sort of non-fiction side still sort of bubbling away underneath.
It is, yes, and because of my technical training, the non-fiction writing actually comes relatively easily to me. Sunshine and Sausages is actually my what is it, musicians? When you have somebody who's training to be a a composer. They write
Magnum opus, is
practice
it?
pieces, or you know, I've forgotten what they're called, but basically it's the thing I use whenever I want to try out a new technology. So I first wrote it when back in the days when I was writing for content mills rather than anything else. I was just trying things out, and then in about whenever the technology changed, about 2009, we started talking about ebooks. So I used that for my very first ebook, which was actually, I can't remember the software we used, but it came up with an exe file. And not surprisingly, nobody was interested in that because nobody wanted an exe file to put on their PC.
No.
So I then used it again to try out. I think the next was print on demand. Then I made it into a CD. And then I used it to try out the first PODs when they came along, and then I put it on Kindle, and now it's out there as a book that I sell. Oh, and I also had it printed, so it's in all different formats.
Which is the way to do it, really, isn't it? You don't put all your eggs in one basket at all.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
And yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say the other non-fiction writing that I do is the business of writing, which at the moment are only ebooks, and they're based on the fact that having run my own business for 20 years, although I don't believe I'm far enough advanced to tell anybody how to write, and I'm still learning myself how to write, I do know a lot about running a small business. And any writer who wants to earn anything, or any writer who is selling their work in any way, is a small business person. And so what I've done is I've put together these ebooks to explain the basic minimum standard that you need in terms of business systems. And that all came out of some sessions that I led, some workshops at Swanwick. Some years back we started doing those at the Writers' Summer School.
Very good. And so that's quite important, isn't it? Because as a writer coming from the creative side, the thing that we all concentrate on is the book, the story, the telling of the story, the making of a good book. But actually, and for some people, that's good enough. They just want to write the story and maybe share it amongst friends. But if you actually want to try and make a living out of this, you have to then switch on your sort of commercial head, don't you?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Both from the point of view of the marketing and the promotion and everything, which we all have to do these days. And I think that's whether we are independently published or traditionally published. We all have this, but also the simple business systems, so that we don't have to spend lots of money on accountants putting our accounts together for us at the end of the year.
Yes, that's right. I think that's one. Talking to other sort of fairly new writers, it's a fairly common misconception that if they were lucky enough to get a traditional publishing deal, that's it. The book goes off to the publishers, and the money comes rolling in. And I think they don't realise that actually, as the writer, they're very, very active in the marketing of the book, even for a traditional publisher.
Absolutely, yes. And I spend quite a lot of time chatting to other writers, and the message I'm getting from the traditionally published writers who've been around for quite a while is, if they were starting today, they would probably be going down the independent route rather than the traditional route, because the advantages of being traditionally published are gradually fading.
Yeah, I think so. I think they, and there's, even if you do choose the independent route, people come back into traditional publishing from independent, but it's you have to view publishing as a business, and a publisher, a traditional publisher, as a business. So it's not just whether you've written a damn good book or not, but a lot of the time it's it's whether you can market yourself and the book. Do you have a Twitter following, a Facebook page? Are you the sort of person that a publisher is going to find it fairly easy to market? How amenable are you to doing that marketing? So but so you're firmly and happily in independent publishing and shall stay so?
Absolutely, yes. Certainly, as far as selling books in this country is concerned, and selling books in English, put it that way, I do realise that I miss out probably on the opportunity for overseas rights and things like that. But no, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to woo an agent who then has to try and woo a publisher, when I know that there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of other people out there doing the same thing. And if I was starting writing out if I was 20, then I might want to spend a little more time on it. But no, the more I think about it, I have actually. It's taken me 2 or 3 years to come to the decision, but I am fairly convinced now that even if somebody phoned me up and said, I'm such and such an agent and I'd like to represent you, I think I would probably say no.
That's fair enough. I think it's like me. You're a mature writer, shall we say? So I think I'd rather spend my time creating stories and writing books rather than going through the submit reject merry-go-round for and if you're younger it might be different. And do you think there is still a kudos to being traditionally published?
I think there is. I think there will always be a kudos to being traditionally published in some circles. I mean, I did my MA in creative writing 2 or 3 years ago, and there was really, even then, very little recognition of independent publishing as an option. I think that again is breaking down, but I suspect in the more literary circles, traditional publishing still has the kudos. It still gives you the links into the Sunday Times review section and things like that. But I think that there is a growing acceptance that independent publishing is a legitimate alternative, and every time we get one of the more well-known writers who is walking away from traditional publishing in order to become independently published, that helps the case.
Yeah, and there should be. It should be the case that a book is a book is a book, and it doesn't matter as long as it's well produced. And traditional published books aren't always completely perfect and error-free, but as long as the book is well produced and well finished and a professional item, then it shouldn't matter whether it's Macmillan or Bloomsbury or J Blogs down the road. It's
yes.
Oh, that reminds me. I was reading, because I do a bit of research, I was reading that you had some of your books printed locally.
Yes, all my recent books I've had printed by a printer in Crediton, because I live down in Devon, and there is a printer in Crediton called Hedgerow Print, and we use them. I've used them over the years for things I've done for the community, so I knew them and I had a relationship set up with them, and if I have a problem I can get on the phone and chat with them. So yes, that's each of the books. We have even if they're on CreateSpace as the the last one, the novel, is on CreateSpace, but we've also had a short run done for local sales. Because certainly at the moment, with launch parties and things, I'm selling far more of copies of the novel face to face than I am on CreateSpace.
That's right. It's out there in the big wide internet world. There's a lot of books, aren't there? And no matter how hard you push your social media presence, there's only so many books that you can sell at any one time. And and yeah, people are more likely to buy from a local author, I'm sure. Have you got books? Do you have local bookshops down there?
We don't have a local bookshop in the town that I live in. I'm sort of halfway between Exeter and Newton Abbot, both of which have Waterstones in them. I think the closest independent bookshops are 15 or 20 miles away, so there's nothing really there. What I have done with my previous books, and what I'm going to do with the novel probably in a month or so's time when my face-to-face events are finished, is I get them stocked in craft shops, gift shops. We have a thing called Cannantine Falls, just up the road from us, which is a tourist attraction, and I've got my books in their gift shop. I have to say my best outlet for my short stories, and I'm hoping also for the novel, is a garage is a petrol station on the A38 at the bottom of Holden Hill.
Really?
And the first run of books we put in there sold out very quickly because they put them on the counter right next to the till. And it's a place that a lot of people, I'm assuming that it's because it's people that are going on the A38 down to Cornwall for a holiday, stopping off for petrol, and seeing it, and knowing that the weather may not be as clement as they hope it's going to be throughout the holidays, are taking some holiday reading. Fantastic.
That's very, very astute marketing, I think. There.
Yes.
Very, very good. So you published three. So apart from your non-fiction work, you've published three collections of short stories. Two with a friend, Sharon.
Yes.
And back end of last year, you published your first novel, your debut novel, even.
Yes. Gorgito's Ice Rink. Which,
I was going to ask you how to pronounce it.
Yes, with hard G's. Gorgito.
Hard G's. Yeah, yes. I was with sort of Latin language background. I was making the second G soft, the Gorgito, but it's Gorgito.
No, that's more Italian. This is because Gorgito comes from Georgia, the country, not the state.
Yes. Yeah. So if you had to put Gorgito's Ice Rink into a genre, would it fit into a genre?
Probably not. I could tell you a couple of books that I think it is similar to, insofar as readers of those books would enjoy this one, if that will make sense.
That's a good idea.
It's the books I always compare it to are A Short History of Tractors in Ukrainian by Marina Lewiska. From the point of view of the sort of bittersweet humour and obviously the Russian and Georgian background similar to the Ukrainian, so it's all that part of the world, if you like. But also I see similarities to salmon fishing in the Yemen, because it has a larger than life character who has a seemingly impossible task that he is aiming to complete. So it's a quest novel with underlying historical and romantic themes.
And it has a sort of multi-year timeline, doesn't it?
It does, yes. The main timeline is 1995 to 2005, and that's the time I went out there in 93. So my experience of working there is what fed into that part of the story. But there is then a flashback timeline which starts in 1949 and moves forward to really 1970, and that sort of covers the post-war Gulag area and goes through to after the Gulag's finished, and say 1970ish is when that timeline finishes. So yes, it's a mix.
It's sometimes, and that's the good thing about self-publishing, isn't it? Because your books don't necessarily have to fit into a genre, because that I would imagine that's what an agent and a publisher is going to want to know. Where does it fit on the shelf? But it doesn't have to. We have all sorts of strange genres appearing these days.
Yes.
Except
when you try to categorize it for Kindle, and then you do have to be quite specific. And I think I put it in historical fiction in the end, on the basis that it's a little bit too far back for contemporary. So I think it's historical fiction, and then I can't remember there's 2 or 3 different bits. So it's historical, romantic, and I can't remember the other bit, but it's difficult to specify.
But it's a book. It's a book, and it's a good story. And
yes.
Oh yes.
Well, I think it is, but then I would say that.
No, I'm sure you're completely impartial. Was this the book that you always felt that you wanted to write, that was sort of inside you and needed to get out, or was it something you just sort of sat down one day and thought, what shall I write about?
I think it was probably the latter, to start with, anyway, because I'd written some short stories. I knew that I wanted to write about Russia. Gorgito is based, although the entire story is fictional, he is based on somebody I knew, the first person I ever worked with when I was in Russia. So there were things in my head that I wanted to get out, and I started it. I think it was 2007. NaNoWriMo, which of course is I think most writers know, National Novel Writing Month. So I wanted to write my 50,000 words. I think I got to about 6,000 and then ran out. And at that time I was writing episodes, just different bits and pieces, and then I started pulling them together, and I fairly early on I knew the end. For 3 years I went round and round in circles and rewrote those first 6,000 words and changed the order of them and kept changing different things. And then I sat down while I was at Exeter Uni. I sat down and did a full plan for the story, because by then it was the book that I wanted to write. So I then had what I thought was the full story, and I finished that, and I got the first draft done, and then I realized there was a whole nother bit that needed to go in as well. So each time I rewrote it, I put another strand in there.
Very good. But it's sometimes how the story develops. I'm a NaNoWriMo devotee, and I think last year was my 11th time, and I'm a great believer in just getting the story down, which is what I think NaNoWriMo is great for, because you've got a chance to blast the story out in a month, and once it's down, you can look at it and think, nah, it doesn't work, or it's too messy, or there's too many peaks and troughs, and you want to even it out. And I'm a firm believer in trying to get the first draft out as quickly as possible, so you can see whether the whole thing works as a story before you spend time going back and rewriting and editing and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So and I see you won last year's NaNoWriMo.
I did, yes, and that's with novel number 2, which I'm about 56,000 words into, but I have to confess that again, I got to a certain extent, I got to about 20,000 on this, because I did no planning for this one. Again, I thought I'd just see how it goes. I did about 20-odd thousand, and then that's where I thought I need to plan this a bit better. So what I did for the rest of the month was that I thought, okay, these are the characters I've got. What situations might they get into? So I've got the first 20,000, and then I've got various different situations. And because it's a bit more of a thriller than Ice Rink was, I've got a kidnapping, and I've got various other things in there. And now I've put it to one side for a couple of months so while I do other things, and then I'm going to sit down with it, look at what I've got, and then I will plan out the rest of the story, and then, as you say, write the rest of the first draft quite quickly, and then start polishing it.
Very good, very good. And is this one going to be set in Russia too?
No, this one's set in Africa.
And I presume you've spent time in Africa also.
I have, yes. Not as much time as I've spent in Russia. I've been to Russia more than 50 times, and I've worked in that part of the world quite consistently for the last, well, certainly for 15 of the last 20 years. But I did quite a bit of work with various companies in Africa, and I had one wonderful project for the European Union, for the Commonwealth Secretariat, where I had to go and do some work in Seychelles and Mauritius.
Oh no!
I know. It's such a hard life.
That's horrible. How could they do that to you?
But they did send me to a number of other countries which were not as pleasant as Seychelles. In fact, they sent me out to Zimbabwe, and I landed in Harare Airport on the day that the Commonwealth expelled Zimbabwe from their midst. And I was carrying a little letter in my pocket that said, this lady is working for the Commonwealth Secretariat. Please give her all the support you can. I didn't take that letter out of my pocket because I thought it wouldn't be particularly useful.
No. It's in my normal working life. I travelled around the world quite a bit, and friends would always say, "Oh, where are you going to next? And, Japan again, or is it America?" And it's they talked about it like it was so exciting, and you think, "Oh, it's such a pain." Yeah. It's real, flights and hotels and transferring from one to the other, and no, I'm glad all that's behind me. But did you enjoy your travelling and your time going around the world like that?
I did. I loved it. When I first started travelling, which was back in the late 1980s, airports were such exciting places. I used to get a thrill every time I went to the airport, and I really loved the travelling. And I have met some wonderful people. I've had some brilliant experiences, both good and bad, but memorable. But I'd done enough, and these days travelling is not as exciting and not as carefree as it was 20 or 30 years ago. So I'm pleased that I've stopped when I did.
Yeah, I think quite often airports, aren't they? They
Yes.
look very similar, and they've got a similar feel to them, and they're just places to get through and out of as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. So You're sort of in the middle of writing your second novel. Are you still writing short fiction?
I am, yes. I've set myself a ridiculous number of targets for this year, because I I find that if I set myself lots of stretch targets, even if I don't get to all of them, I do more than if I have set quite low goals. So I've set myself a target that I want to get my number of out there's up to 50. So at the moment I'm just entering loads and loads of different competitions, and I'm going to do that over the next couple of months while I'm doing the third in the Business of Writing series. That one's coming out at the end of this month, and then I'm going to put the three of them together as a because at the moment there are only ebooks. I'm going to put them together as a Create Space paperback, and then at the beginning of March I'll go back to working on the novel. But yes, I enjoy doing the short fiction as well, and as you know, Gerald, I'm doing the 100K challenge as well. So just to keep my hand in.
Like you do, yeah.
Yes.
I know. I just look at these things and I can't resist them. You know, NaNoWriMo, 100K, anything. Anything that involves writing words in a certain amount of time. I think, yeah, I'll do that. And yeah, like you, I do work better under a little bit of pressure. And there's that phrase, isn't there? You should aim for the stars and you could hit the moon or something.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, it sort of came into my mind when you said even if you don't reach the target that you set, you're still going to do more than you would have done with lower targets. So I quite agree with that. This year is going to be my publishing year, but I'm spending too long messing about with cameras and microphones and gubbins. It's one I said to my wife this morning. It's this sort of podcasting lark is one of those things that you sort of get into it and you think, oh, that's quite jolly, but this could be better and this could be better, and now I'm surrounded by stuff to make it better, and you're looking at the lighting and you think, oh, it could be better. And so, but yeah, I'm coming to the end of this now, so I'm going to go back to writing soon. Honest. Are you up to date with 100K?
I am, in fact. Up until yesterday, I had done more than 1,000 every day, and in fact, I was a couple of thousand ahead. So today, I've only done a couple of hundred words because I publish our town's monthly newsletter, and it's Chudley Phoenix week. So I'm putting that together at the moment, and that's taking up time, but. I'm getting words as I go along, but I'm actually having fun with this one because I on the internet last remember a book called 1,000 Awesome Writing Triggers, I think. I'll just check. I can even tell you who wrote it. 1,000 Awesome Writing Prompts.
Right.
By Ryan Andrew. Bless him, I can't see it on the screen. If I'm going to quote his book, I should really be able to tell you his name, shouldn't I? What I'll do is I'll make sure I get you the link before we finish.
No problem.
But
no.
So what I'm doing is I'm just taking each one of those each day, and just writing. So it's almost like doing a free writing exercise in the morning, and I'm not worrying about whether or not it gives me anything usable, but I can see at the end of the time that there's bits and pieces there that will be flash fiction. There's some memoir stuff. There's all sorts of things in there. So yeah, I'm having fun with it.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I quite some years ago we did something for children in need, a bunch of online writers, and we had 24 hours where we had to write as many pieces of flash fiction as we could.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, you just sort of get into this. It's not a dreamlike state, but it's almost a sort of automatic thing. You just look at a set of prompts, and something will jump out, and away you go,
Yes.
and you write. And you don't even think about it. It's like you say. It's almost like free writing. It's just, you know, what ideas in your head are not being edited. They're just coming straight out through your fingers, and it's a fantastic experience, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's great fun, and I never believed until I started doing this that, you know, when people say, "Oh, my characters write themselves and they tell me what to do, and I didn't expect them to do that," but it's true. You know, and sometimes I'll come in at the end of a writing session, and particularly when I was writing Gorgito's Ice Rink, and I'd say to Michael, "Do you know what he's done now?"
Really?
Yeah, it's yeah. So it's a really fun way to spend your time.
That's really good. That's excellent. Okay, well, I think we're coming up to 8 o'clock, so unfortunately we didn't have quite the amount of time we should have done, but we persevered. I was going to say persecuted, then we persevered. I was so glad we did. I was at one point I was thinking, oh, let's just, you know, abandon it for tonight. But it's been a real pleasure. Really enjoyed talking to you, and I'll put links. Probably the best thing. Do you have a Twitter account?
I certainly do. Yes, I have Twitter, I have Facebook, I have Google Plus, although I don't use it as much as I should. I have LinkedIn, Pinterest.
Oh my God! Stop! So what I'll do is in the show notes I'll put links to your Twitter and do you have an author page on Facebook?
I do. Yes, it's Elizabeth
Okay.
Ducie, author.
Okay.
And you presumably you have the link to my blog.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I found that. So yeah, I'll put those in the show notes, and I'll put a link to the 1,000 Autumn Writing Prompts as well. 1,000
Yes,
Awesome.
1,000 Awesome Writing Prompts, and it's Ryan Andrew Kinder.
Okay. As in the egg.
Yes, that's right.
I bet people say that a lot too.
I'm sure they do.
But yeah, I'll make sure those go in the show notes, and all that remains to be said is to thank you, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been great fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, really? I'm so glad. I'm so glad. It's yeah, I enjoy it, and it's you know, it's worth sometimes struggling over the technical issues to actually get people on, because everyone's got a different story, everyone's got a different background, and it's nice to hear it. Okay, well we'll just say thank you to, we've got one live viewer, so I don't know who that is. Somebody's stuck with us. Well done, whoever you are. So thank you to the live viewer, and thank you to the people who will be watching on YouTube later, and catch us again. No show tomorrow night. Should have a show Friday night for you. So thank you very much for watching, and catch you soon.